On Christmas Eve, a billionaire scarred by fire sits alone in his tower, untouchable, unloved. A power outage traps him with a night janitor who doesn't know his name. In the darkness, she asks to see his scars. Not to pity him, not to fix him, but to understand him. One conversation, one truth, one kiss that changes everything. But when the lights return, so does reality. Can love survive when the world finds out? This is Scarred Beneath the Snow, a story about seeing past what the world refuses to look at. If you believe love heals what money can't buy, stay until the end. You won't regret it. The lights went out at exactly 9:47 p.m. Howard Jones had just signed the last document on his desk when the hum of the building died. The fluorescent lights blinked once, twice, then surrendered to darkness. Emergency backup lights flickered on moments later, casting weak amber glows along the hallway outside his office door. He didn't move. The silence felt appropriate somehow. Boston's skyline had been glittering through his floor-to-ceiling windows only seconds ago. Now it was swallowed by the snowstorm that had been threatening all evening. He could barely make out the shapes of other buildings through the thick white curtain descending on the city. His phone buzzed once before the signal died. No bars. No connection. Howard leaned back in his leather chair and exhaled slowly. The air in his lungs felt heavier than usual. Christmas Eve. Of course the storm would hit tonight. Of course he'd be alone in this tower when it did. He touched his right cheek without thinking. The scar tissue felt different under his fingertips, thicker, less sensitive than the rest of his skin. The burns had happened 3 years ago, a car accident that had nearly killed him. The physical pain had ended months later. The other kind never did. Women looked at him differently now. They tried not to stare, which made it worse. First dates became exercises in watching them struggle between politeness and discomfort. Second dates rarely happened. Third dates never did. The media still called him eligible. The most eligible bachelor in Boston, they said. They didn't understand that eligibility meant nothing when no one wanted to stay. A sound broke through his thoughts. Humming. Someone was humming a Christmas hymn in the hallway. Howard stood and moved toward his office door. The emergency lights created long shadows that stretched and twisted along the corridor. The humming grew clearer. A woman's voice, gentle and unhurried, singing about silent nights and holy nights. He opened his door just as she rounded the corner. She nearly walked straight into him. Her cleaning cart stopped inches from his shoes. Oh. She stepped back quickly, one hand going to her chest. I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't think anyone was still here. Howard studied her in the dim light. She wore a gray janitor's uniform with the building management company's logo on the breast pocket. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She couldn't have been more than 30, though her eyes held the kind of tiredness that came from too many double shifts. Her skin was dark, her features soft, and her expression carried no trace of recognition. She didn't know who he was. I was working late, Howard said. His voice came out rougher than intended. The storm knocked out the power, she said, gesturing vaguely at the emergency lights. They're saying it might be hours before it's back. You should probably head home before the roads get worse. I live in the building. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. The penthouse. He nodded. Well, at least you don't have to drive. She smiled, and it reached her eyes. I'm Irene. I clean this floor most nights. Howard. Nice to meet you, Howard. She moved to push her cart past him, then paused. Do you have candles up there? In your apartment, I mean. The emergency lights won't last all night. I don't know. You don't know if you have candles? I don't usually look for them. Irene tilted her head, considering him. There was no judgment in her gaze, only curiosity. I have some in my supply closet. Let me grab a few for you. Can't have you stumbling around in the dark all night. Before he could respond, she was already moving down the hallway, her cart rattling softly. Howard stood in his doorway, uncertain whether to follow or wait. He wasn't accustomed to people offering him things. People usually asked him for things instead. She returned within minutes carrying half a dozen white emergency candles and a lighter. These should help. Do you have something to put them in? A plate or a bowl? I'm sure I can find something. Good. She handed them over, her fingers brushing his briefly. She didn't flinch when she saw the scarring on his right hand. Most people did. Merry Christmas, Howard. You're working on Christmas Eve. Someone has to. Her tone was matter of fact, not bitter. Besides, the overtime pay helps. My grandmother needs her medications. He stopped himself. He'd been about to say something about money, about how he could help. But she didn't know he was the man who owned this building. She didn't know he could solve her problems with a single phone call. And something about that anonymity felt precious. That's kind of you. To take care of her. She raised me. It's my turn now. Irene glanced toward the windows at the end of the hall. The snow was falling harder, visible even in the weak emergency lighting. I should finish my rounds before this gets worse. But if you need anything, I'll be on this floor for another hour. She started to turn away. Irene. Yes. Thank you. For the candles. Her smile came easily, warmly. You're welcome. Howard watched her disappear around the corner, her humming resuming as she went. The hallway felt emptier after she left. He returned to his office and gathered his things, then headed for the stairwell. The elevator was useless without power. 43 flights of stairs to the penthouse. He'd made the climb before during fire drills. His legs would remind him tomorrow. But when he reached the 38th floor, he stopped. The stairwell emergency door had a small window. Through it, he could see the executive lounge, a space reserved for board members and high-level clients. Irene was inside, arranging candles on one of the tables. She'd already lit several. The warm glow made the room look almost cozy despite its usual corporate coldness. Howard pushed open the door. Irene looked up, startled. Oh, did you forget something? I was heading upstairs. He gestured toward the continuing stairwell. Saw the light. I thought people might appreciate a warm spot if they get stuck here tonight. Not everyone lives in the building like you do. She adjusted one of the candles. The maintenance guys might come through, or late-night security. That's thoughtful. Well, Christmas is supposed to be about not leaving people in the cold, right? She studied him for a moment. You look exhausted. When's the last time you took a break? I don't keep track. That's a problem. She gestured to one of the plush chairs. Sit. I have coffee in my thermos if you want some. It's not fancy, but it's hot. Howard knew he should decline. He should continue upstairs to his penthouse with its silent rooms and perfect furniture. But something about the candlelight, about her easy hospitality, made him stay. He sat. Irene poured coffee into the thermos cap and handed it to him. The cup was slightly chipped but clean. The coffee was strong and sweet. She'd added sugar without asking, as if she knew he needed it. Thank you, he said quietly. She poured her own cup and settled into the chair across from him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Snow pressed against the glass like it wanted to come inside. Do you have family? Irene asked finally. People waiting for you to come home tonight. No. Friends. Not the kind who wait. She nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something she'd suspected. That sounds lonely. It is. The admission surprised him. He didn't usually confess such things. But the darkness, the storm, the unexpected companionship, it all conspired to loosen his usual defenses. I used to think being alone was the same as being strong, Irene said. She stared into her coffee. Like if I didn't need anyone, I couldn't be hurt. But that's not strength. That's just fear dressed up as independence. What changed your mind? My grandmother got sick. Really sick. And I realized I couldn't do it alone. Didn't want to either. Asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Howard considered her words. He'd spent 3 years insulating himself, building walls so high that no one could see over them. He'd convinced himself it was protection. Maybe it was just prison. What about you, he asked. Do you have people waiting? Just Grandma. She'll be asleep by now anyway. Irene's expression softened. I was engaged once. Nice man. Good heart. But when money got tight and I had to choose between the wedding and Grandma's medical bills, he couldn't understand why I picked her. Said I was choosing poverty over our future. He was wrong. I know. She met his eyes directly. Love shouldn't require you to abandon the people who loved you first. If he couldn't see that, he wasn't the one. Do you regret it? Not for a second. I regret wasting time on someone who didn't value what I valued. But I don't regret the choice itself. She paused. What about you? Ever been close to marriage? No. By choice. Howard's jaw tightened. Not exactly. Irene waited. She didn't push, didn't pry. She just waited, giving him space to decide whether to continue. He found himself wanting to. I was in an accident 3 years ago, he said slowly. Car crash. Fire. I was trapped inside for several minutes before they cut me out. Understanding dawned in her eyes. Your scars. Yes. He instinctively turned his face slightly, presenting his better side. I survived. But the burns changed how people see me. How women see me. They see the scars instead of you. They try not to. That's almost worse. They're so careful not to stare that it's all they're thinking about. Every conversation becomes an exercise in pretending not to notice. And eventually, they stop calling. That must hurt more than the accident did. The accuracy of her statement hit him like a physical blow. Yes. Irene set down her coffee and leaned forward. Candlelight played across her features. Can I see them? The scars, I mean. Howard's breath caught. Why? Not to judge. Not to pity. Just to understand. Her voice remained steady, sincere. You don't have to. But I think maybe you've spent a long time hiding them. Sometimes being seen, really seen, helps more than hiding ever could. His heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, to deflect, to maintain the careful distance he'd cultivated. But something about this woman, this moment, this strange Christmas Eve trapped in candlelight, made him brave. Slowly, Howard turned his head. The right side of his face caught the full glow of the candles. The scars were extensive, raised tissue that started at his temple, traveled down his cheek, continued along his jaw, and disappeared beneath his collar. His right ear was partially reconstructed. The skin was different colors, different textures, a permanent map of trauma. Irene studied him carefully. Not quickly, not politely. She actually looked at him. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. Thank you for trusting me with that, she said softly. You're not disgusted? Why would I be disgusted? She tilted her head. Howard, these scars mean you survived. They mean you fought, and you won. That's not something to be disgusted by. That's something to respect. Most people don't see it that way. Then most people are foolish. Irene reached across the space between them and touched his hand, the scarred one. Her fingers were warm. We all have scars. Some are just more visible than others. Yours happened to mark your skin. Mine marked my heart. But they're both real. Both valid. Both part of who we are. Howard stared at their joined hands. When was the last time someone had touched him like this? Without hesitation, without careful avoidance of the damaged parts? I don't know what to say, he admitted. You don't have to say anything. She squeezed his hand gently before letting go. Sometimes being seen is enough. They sat in comfortable silence after that. The storm continued its assault on the city outside. Inside, the candles burned steadily, creating a pocket of warmth against the December cold. Can I ask you something? Howard said eventually. Of course. How do you stay so balanced? You work overnight shifts, take care of your grandmother, probably barely make ends meet. But you're not bitter. You're not angry. How? Irene considered the question seriously. I guess I learned that bitterness only hurts the person carrying it. Life is hard, that's just true. But hard doesn't have to mean hopeless. I choose to find moments of joy where I can. A good cup of coffee, snow falling, unexpected conversations with strangers on Christmas Eve. She gestured between them. This counts as joy, Howard. Right here. It does, doesn't it? For you? He thought about his penthouse waiting upstairs, empty, silent, perfect. He thought about the countless Christmas Eves he'd spent alone, convincing himself he preferred it that way. And he thought about this moment, this woman, this feeling of being known. Yes, he said. It does. Irene's smile widened. Then that's enough. We don't need grand gestures or perfect circumstances. We just need to recognize joy when we find it. I haven't found much joy in 3 years. Then I'm glad you found some tonight. The clock on the wall showed 11:30. Time was moving faster than Howard wanted it to. In 30 minutes, it would be Christmas Day. And then what? The power would come back eventually. Irene would finish her shift and go home. He would return to his isolation. This moment would end like all moments end, by being replaced by the next one. Unless he did something about it. Irene, he began carefully. When this is over, when the storm passes and the power returns, can I see you again? Actually see you, I mean. Not just passing in hallways. She studied him for a long moment. Why? Because you're the first person in 3 years who's made me feel human again. Because talking to you feels easy in a way nothing else does. Because I don't want this to be just a story I tell myself about one strange Christmas Eve. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're kind without being weak. Strong without being hard. Honest without being cruel. That's more than I've known about anyone in a long time. Howard. She said his name gently, carefully. I'm a janitor. You live in the penthouse of the building I clean. We exist in very different worlds. I don't care about worlds. I care about this. About how I feel right now, sitting here with you. And how do you feel? Seen. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Irene looked away, conflict clear on her face. I don't do fairy tales. I don't believe in being rescued or swept off my feet. I've worked too hard to survive to pretend life is a romance novel. I'm not offering a fairy tale. I'm offering coffee. Maybe dinner. Maybe more conversations like this one. That's all. Is it though? What happens when you realize I can't fit into your world? When your friends meet me and judge you for slumming? When the novelty of my realness wears off and you remember you're a... She stopped abruptly. I'm a what? Her expression shifted. Careful now. You're clearly successful. Your clothes, your confidence, the way you carry yourself. And I'm not. She still didn't know. Somehow, impossibly, she still hadn't realized she was sitting with Howard Jones, owner of this building and half a dozen others. Billionaire. Public figure. The scarred man the media wrote about with mixture of pity and fascination. He should tell her. The longer he waited, the worse the revelation would be. But the words wouldn't come. Because right now, in this candlelit room with snow falling outside, he wasn't that Howard Jones. He was just Howard. Just a man talking to a woman who saw past his scars without even trying. Money doesn't matter, he said instead. Money always matters when you don't have it. Then I'll have enough for both of us. Irene shook her head. That's not how this works. I won't be kept. I won't be someone's charity case or convenient companion. I've built a life on my own terms. It's small and it's hard, but it's mine. I respect that. I do. But that doesn't mean you have to do it alone forever. Forever is a big word for two people who met 3 hours ago. Then let's start with tomorrow. Or next week. Or whenever you're ready. Howard leaned forward, desperate for her to understand. I'm not asking you to change your life. I'm asking for a chance to be part of it. The church bells began to ring in the distance. Midnight. Christmas Day. Irene stood and walked to the window. The snow had intensified, turning the city into a white void. Only the closest buildings were visible now, their emergency lights creating small islands in the storm. Howard joined her at the window. They stood side by side, not touching but close enough to feel each other's warmth. I'm scared, Irene said quietly. I'm scared that if I say yes, if I let this be something, it'll end the way things always end. And I'll be left with another scar I have to carry. I'm scared too, Howard admitted. I'm scared you'll look at me in daylight and realize you were just being kind. That the scars are too much after all. That I'm too damaged. You're not damaged. Then neither are you. She turned to face him. They were inches apart now. Howard could see flecks of gold in her dark eyes. Could see the tiredness that came from too many double shifts. Yes, but also the strength that came from surviving them. What are we doing? She whispered. I don't know, but it feels right. That doesn't mean it is right. It doesn't mean it's wrong either. The bells continued their midnight song. Christmas carols drifted up from somewhere far below. Someone singing despite the storm, despite the darkness. Howard reached up slowly, giving Irene every chance to move away. When she didn't, he cupped her face with his scarred hand. His thumb traced the curve of her cheek. I'm going to kiss you, he said. If that's okay. It's probably a mistake. Probably. We barely know each other. True. This doesn't change anything about our different circumstances. I know. Then why? He kissed her. Gently at first, testing. When she didn't pull away, didn't stiffen, he deepened it slightly. Her lips were soft and warm and tasted like sweet coffee. She made a small sound in the back of her throat. Not protest, not quite surrender, just acknowledgement that this was happening. When they broke apart, both were breathing harder. Well, Irene said shakily. That was... The lights came back on. All of them. Fluorescent overheads flooding the room with harsh white brightness. The hum of the building's systems powering back up. The Christmas music from the lobby speakers suddenly audible through the vents. And voices. Security guards calling out to each other in the stairwells. Maintenance workers coordinating over radios. Mr. Jones. A security guard burst into the executive lounge. Thank God you're safe. We've been trying to reach you. Are you hurt? Do you need? He stopped when he saw Irene. His expression shifted from concern to confusion. Ma'am, this area is restricted to. It's fine, Howard said quickly. Too quickly. But Irene had already taken a step back. She was looking around the room, seeing the expensive artwork, the real crystal in the bar, the kinds of details that marked this as a space for the very wealthy. Then she looked at Howard. Really looked at him in the full light. "Mr. Jones," she repeated slowly. Her voice had gone flat. As in, Howard Jones. He said nothing. What could he say? Understanding flooded her expression. "You own this building. Irene. You're the billionaire. The one the newspapers write about. The eligible bachelor." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And you let me sit here talking about my grandmother's medical bills and my janitor's salary like we were equals. We are equals. Don't." She held up a hand. "Don't insult me by pretending that's true. You probably make more in an hour than I make in a year. You could have told me. You should have told me. Would it have mattered? Yes. Of course it would have mattered. Because now everything, every word, every moment. I don't know what was real and what was you playing at being normal. It was all real," Howard insisted. "Everything I said, everything I felt." Felt? Irene's voice rose slightly. "You felt what exactly? Curious about how the other half lives? Wanted to have a Christmas slumming experience? Kiss the poor janitor in the candlelight and feel like a good person? That's not fair." "Fair?" She grabbed her cleaning cart. "You want to talk about fair? I trusted you. I showed you my heart. And you were lying the whole time. I never lied. You didn't tell the truth. That's close enough." She pushed the cart toward the door. The security guard stepped aside hastily. "Irene, please. Let me explain." She stopped in the doorway but didn't turn around. "There's nothing to explain, Mr. Jones. We live in different worlds. I always knew that. I just didn't realize how different until now. It doesn't have to matter. But it does." Now she did turn, and Howard saw tears on her cheeks. "It matters because I can't tell if anything you said was honest. I can't tell if you were being genuine or if I was just entertainment. A Christmas Eve novelty. And I can't. I won't be that for anyone. You're not. Goodbye, Howard." She disappeared into the stairwell. The security guard cleared his throat awkwardly. "Sir, should I?" "No." Howard's voice came out rough. "Let her go." Because what else could he do? Chase after her? Use his money and power to track her down? Force a conversation she clearly didn't want? That would only prove her fears correct. He'd finally found someone who saw him. Really saw him. And he'd lost her through his own cowardice. Howard walked to the window. The storm was already clearing. Stars were visible between the clouds. By morning, Boston would be blanketed in pristine snow. Everyone would post photos and call it beautiful. He knew it would just look cold. Howard spent Christmas Day in his penthouse, staring at nothing. His phone rang constantly. Friends, business partners, family members calling with holiday wishes. He let it go to voicemail. The candles Irene had given him sat on his kitchen counter. He brought them upstairs in those last moments before the power returned. White emergency candles, slightly melted, marked with wax drippings from their brief time burning in the executive lounge. They were the most precious things he owned. By the evening of December 26th, he couldn't stand his own company anymore. He made calls, used the resources available to him. Within hours, he had Irene's personnel file from building management. She worked Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. She'd been employed for 2 years. Perfect attendance record. No complaints. Her home address was in Dorchester, a working-class neighborhood in South Boston. He could show up there, knock on her door, use the element of surprise to force a conversation. But that felt wrong. Predatory, almost. Instead, he found another detail in her file. On weekends, she attended a small church in her neighborhood. Grace Community Church. Sunday services at 10 a.m. Howard made a decision. He arrived at Grace Community Church at 9:45 on Sunday morning. The building was modest, brick exterior, simple white steeple, hand-painted sign announcing this week's sermon topic. Nothing like the grand cathedrals downtown. Cars were already filling the small parking lot. Families walked inside, children in their Sunday best, parents carrying casseroles for the potluck announced on the community board. Howard sat in his car, a modest sedan, not the town car with a driver he usually used, and waited. His scars were completely visible. No strategic angles, no careful lighting. If he was going to do this, he was doing it honestly. At 9:52, Irene arrived. She was pushing an elderly woman in a wheelchair, her grandmother, presumably. The older woman was bundled in blankets despite the winter coat. Irene moved carefully across the icy parking lot, her movements protective and practiced. Howard got out of his car. Irene saw him immediately. She stopped walking, her hands tight on the wheelchair handles. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I needed to see you." "So you tracked me down?" "That's not." "I know." He held up his hands. "I know how it looks. But I couldn't leave things the way they were. I need you to understand something." "You need to leave," Irene said firmly. "This is my church. My space. You don't get to invade it just because you have money and resources." "Is this the famous boyfriend?" The elderly woman spoke up, her voice surprisingly strong. "Because, honey, I thought you said he was handsome." "Grandma, I'm teasing. He's plenty handsome." "Scarred, though? That the car accident you mentioned?" Howard blinked. "You told her about me?" "I tell her everything," Irene said stiffly. "And I told her it was over before it started." "But is it?" the grandmother pressed. "Because he drove all the way out here on a Sunday morning. That's effort, baby girl. It's manipulation." "No," Howard said. "It's desperation." People were starting to notice them. A few parishioners had paused on their way into the church, curious about the well-dressed stranger in the parking lot. "Can we talk?" Howard asked. "Please. If you still want me to leave after, I will. I promise. But give me 5 minutes." Irene looked torn. Finally, she turned to her grandmother. "Grandma, can you?" "I'll will myself inside," the older woman said. "Take your time. But remember what I always told you. Courage is doing the right thing even when it's scary. For both of you." She wheeled herself away with surprising speed, leaving Howard and Irene alone. "5 minutes," Irene said. "That's all." "I should have told you who I was," Howard said immediately. "The moment we started really talking, I should have been honest. I was a coward not to." "Yes, you were. But I was a coward because I was scared. Because for the first time in 3 years, someone was looking at me without seeing my bank account first. Without seeing the scars or the story or the tragedy. You saw me, Irene. Just me. And I was terrified that if you knew the truth, that would change. It did change. Because I let it. Because I gave you reason to doubt everything." He took a step closer. "But nothing I said was a lie. Not one word. I am lonely. I am isolated. Women do leave when they see my scars. Not because the scars are there, but because they don't know how to see past them to who I am underneath. You did that without even trying. How do I know this isn't just about novelty? About the thrill of slumming with the poor janitor? Because I'm standing in your church parking lot, with no security, no buffer, letting everyone here see exactly who I am. Scars and all. Money and all. Does this look like slumming to you?" Irene studied him. "What do you want, Howard? Really? A chance. Not to fix you or save you or change your life. Just a chance to be part of it. To take you to dinner. To meet your grandmother properly. To learn what makes you laugh and what makes you angry and what you dream about when you let yourself dream." He paused. "And to let you know all of those things about me. The real things. Not the version the newspapers print." "This is crazy." "Probably. We're from completely different worlds." "So? I don't care about worlds. I care about you. You don't even know me. Then let me know you. That's all I'm asking. A real chance." A child's laugh echoed from inside the church. Someone was playing piano, practicing hymns before the service started. Normal sounds. Life continuing regardless of this small drama in the parking lot. "I don't want your money," Irene said finally. "I don't want you to solve my problems or make my life easier. I need you to understand that. I do. And I won't change who I am. I won't dress differently or talk differently or pretend to fit into your social circles. If your friends judge you for being with me, that's their problem. But I won't be ashamed of who I am. I don't want you to change. And anyone who judges you isn't my friend. This is probably a mistake. Almost definitely. We might crash and burn spectacularly. That's a risk I'm willing to take." Irene crossed her arms, but her expression had softened slightly. "One date. That's all I'm committing to. If it's awful, we walk away clean." "One date," Howard agreed. "But can I ask for one more thing?" "What? Can I come to church with you? Right now? I'd like to meet your grandmother properly. And I think maybe I could use some Christmas spirit after all." Irene laughed, actually laughed. The sound was like light breaking through clouds. "You want to attend Grace Community Church? You, Howard Jones, billionaire. I want to be where you are. So yes." She shook her head, but she was smiling now. Really smiling. "You're crazy." "Probably. Is that a yes?" "It's a let's see how you handle gospel music and potluck casseroles." "I can handle anything if you're there." That was incredibly cheesy. Was it effective? Unfortunately. She gestured toward the church. "Come on. Service starts in 5 minutes. And fair warning, My grandma is going to interrogate you mercilessly. I look forward to it. They walked toward the church together. Not touching, but close. As they reached the door, Irene paused. Howard. Yes. Thank you for coming. For being honest. For not giving up. Thank you for giving me a chance I probably don't deserve. We'll see if you still think that after Grandma's done with you. Inside, the church was warm and filled with people. Irene's grandmother had saved them seats in the third row. She looked Howard up and down as he sat beside her. So you're the one who has my granddaughter twisted up in knots, she said. Yes, ma'am. I'm afraid so. Good. She needs a little twisting up. Been too serious for too long. The old woman extended a hand. I'm Dorothy Scott. And you better treat my girl right, or you'll answer to me. Billionaire or not. Howard shook her hand carefully. Yes, ma'am. I intend to. See that you do. The service began. Gospel music filled the small space, joyful, powerful, alive. Around them, people sang with their whole hearts. Irene had a beautiful voice, Howard discovered. Clear and strong and full of faith. He didn't know the words to most of the songs. He didn't know when to stand or sit or respond to the call and response parts of the sermon. But it didn't matter. Because Irene would lean over occasionally and whisper instructions. Because Dorothy Scott would pat his arm encouragingly. Because the community welcomed him without question or judgment. For the first time since his accident, Howard felt like he belonged somewhere. After the service, at the potluck in the fellowship hall, he met half of Dorchester. People who had no idea who he was, who just saw a man with scars sitting next to Irene and decided that made him worth knowing. They shared food and stories and laughter. They asked about his work and his life and his intentions with Irene. That last part delivered with varying degrees of seriousness. Howard answered honestly. About everything. When it was time to leave, Irene walked him to his car. So, she said, that was our first date, I guess. Church and potluck casseroles. Not what I expected. Disappointed? Not even a little bit. Howard looked back at the church, at the people visible through the windows still laughing and talking inside. This was perfect. It was real anyway. Real is what I want. Irene studied him in the afternoon light. The sun made his scars more visible, highlighting every line and texture. She reached up and traced one gently with her fingertip. I'm still scared, she admitted. Still worried this ends badly. Me too, Howard said. But I think maybe that's okay. Being scared means it matters. It does matter. That's the problem. Or the solution. He caught her hand and held it against his cheek. What do you want, Irene? Really? She was quiet for a moment, thinking. I want someone who sees me when I'm exhausted after a double shift and still thinks I'm beautiful. Someone who understands that my grandmother comes first and doesn't resent it. Someone who lets me be strong without needing to prove I'm stronger. She paused. And I want someone who trusts me enough to be vulnerable. To show me their scars. All of them. And believe I won't run. I can do that, Howard said softly. I want to do that. Then maybe we have a chance. When can I see you again? I work tonight. And tomorrow night. And every night this week. Then I'll come to you. We can have dinner before your shift. Nothing fancy. Just time together. You do that? Adjust your schedule to mine. Irene, I'd adjust my entire life if it meant being with you. She smiled, but there was sadness in it too. Don't say things like that yet. We barely know each other. You might decide I'm boring or difficult or not worth the effort. I won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He squeezed her hand gently. Because in 3 hours with you during a blackout, I felt more alive than I have in 3 years. That's not something that fades. That's something worth fighting for. Irene leaned forward and kissed his cheek, the scarred one. Her lips were warm against the damaged skin. Tuesday night, she said. There's a diner near my apartment. Maria's place. Meet me there at 8:30. Before my shift. I'll be there. And Howard. Dress normal. No designer suits. No showing off. Just you. Just me, he agreed. She stepped back and waved as he got into his car. He watched her walk back toward the church, toward her grandmother, toward her real life. And he realized something that made his chest tight with emotion. He wanted to be part of that life. Not to change it, or improve it, or fix it. Just to be in it. To belong to someone who belonged to herself first. As he drove back toward downtown Boston, the city looked different. The snow that had seemed cold and empty on Christmas morning now looked clean and full of possibility. The people on the streets weren't just strangers. They were stories waiting to be known. His phone buzzed with messages he'd been ignoring for days. Business partners wondering where he'd been. Society friends asking about New Year's Eve parties. Reporters requesting interviews about his Valentine's Day plans, as if a scarred billionaire's love life was public entertainment. He ignored all of them. Instead, he sent a single text to his assistant. Clear my schedule for Tuesday night. And every Tuesday and Friday night going forward. Non-negotiable. The response came quickly. Is everything all right, Mr. Jones? He smiled at his phone. Everything's perfect. Tuesday night arrived cold and clear. Howard dressed carefully, jeans, a simple sweater, a winter coat that didn't scream expensive. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Not because of the scars. Those were permanent. But because of his expression. He looked hopeful. Maria's place was exactly what he expected. A small diner with vinyl booths and laminate tables. The smell of coffee and frying bacon. Christmas lights still strung along the windows even though the holiday had passed. A chalkboard advertising meatloaf as the special. Irene was already there, sitting in a corner booth. She'd changed out of her church clothes into jeans and a thick sweater. Her hair was down tonight, falling past her shoulders in soft curls. She looked up when he entered and smiled. That smile made everything worth it. You came, she said as he slid into the booth across from her. Did you think I wouldn't? Part of me wondered if you'd come to your senses. Realized this was crazy and bail. I did come to my senses. That's why I'm here. A waitress appeared, older woman, name tag reading Maria. She looked at Howard with open curiosity, but didn't comment on his scars. What can I get you too? She asked. Coffee for me, Irene said. And the turkey club. Same, Howard said. Thank you. Maria nodded and disappeared, leaving them alone in the quiet corner. So, Irene said, this is date number 2. Or maybe it's still date number 1, extended. Does it matter which? I guess not. She wrapped her hands around her water glass. I have to tell you something. I looked you up. After Sunday. Howard's stomach dropped. Oh, I saw the articles. The accident. The recovery. The photos of you before. She met his eyes steadily. And I saw the speculation about your love life. The interviews where reporters asked inappropriate questions about your scars and dating. The gossip columns making you into some kind of tragic figure. It's all true. The articles, I mean. I do have trouble dating. Women do leave. I'm not exaggerating that part. I know. I could see it in the way they wrote about you. Like you were some puzzle to be solved or some charity case to be pitted. Her voice hardened. It made me angry. Angry. Yes. Because they were talking about you like you weren't a whole person. Like the scars were all you were. And I've spent 3 days thinking about our conversation, about how you made me laugh, about how you listened when I talked about my grandmother. None of those articles mentioned that you're funny, or kind, or that you have this way of really hearing what people say instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. Howard felt something loosen in his chest. You looked past the headlines. I looked for the real story, the one that matters. She paused. But I also saw that you're one of the richest men in Boston, that your companies employ thousands of people, that you could buy this entire neighborhood if you wanted to. Does that change things? I don't know yet. I guess I need to understand what you want from this. From me. Howard considered his answer carefully. This moment mattered. He couldn't mess it up with careless words or empty promises. I want what everyone wants, he said finally. Someone to share life with. Someone who makes me want to be better but accepts me as I am. Someone who makes me laugh and challenges me and sees me. Really sees me. He leaned forward. I've been alone for a long time, Irene. Not just since the accident. Before that too. I built walls to keep people out because letting them in meant risking being hurt. And then the accident gave me a convenient excuse to keep those walls up. They're leaving because of the scars, I'd tell myself. But maybe they were leaving because I never really let them in. And you think you can let me in? I think I already have. That night during the blackout, I told you things I've never told anyone. I showed you parts of myself I usually hide. And you didn't run. You didn't pity me. You just accepted it. Accepted me. That scared me, Irene admitted. How easy it was to talk to you. How natural it felt. Why did it scare you? Because natural doesn't mean safe. Natural can be dangerous. Like standing at the edge of a cliff. It feels exhilarating right up until you fall. Then we won't fall. We'll be careful. Can we though? Be careful with this. She gestured between them. There's so much stacked against us. Different backgrounds, different tax brackets, different worlds. Your friends probably think I'm after your money. My friends probably think you're slumming. Do you care what they think? I care what's true. Then let's focus on that. The truth is I'm not slumming. The truth is you're not after my money. You've made that abundantly clear. The truth is we met during a blackout, had the best conversation of my life, and I want more of those conversations. Everything else is just noise. Maria returned with their food. The sandwiches were huge, overflowing with turkey and bacon and fresh vegetables. Simple food, made with care. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Howard realized he was hungrier than he'd thought. When was the last time he'd had an actual meal instead of catered business dinners or room service eaten alone? Tell me about your grandmother, he said eventually. Dorothy. She seems like she doesn't take any nonsense from anyone. Irene laughed. That's putting it mildly. She raised me after my parents died. Car accident, actually. I was 7. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. But Grandma stepped up without hesitation. She was already in her 60s, retired, looking forward to relaxing. Instead, she got a traumatized 7-year-old who had nightmares and refused to get in cars for 2 years. That must have been hard. For both of you. It was. But she never complained. Never made me feel like a burden. She just loved me and pushed me and believed I could be more than my trauma. Irene's expression softened with memory. She used to say, "Baby girl, the worst thing that happened to you doesn't get to be the only thing about you. You're more than that day. You're every day after it." Howard felt those words settle into him. That's wise. She is. That's why when she got sick, when the medical bills started piling up, there was no question what I'd do. She gave me everything. The least I could do was give back. Your fiancé should have understood that. He couldn't see past his own plans. He wanted the wedding, the house, the perfect life timeline. My grandmother's illness wasn't part of that timeline, so it became an obstacle instead of a priority. She shook her head. I realized then that I'd rather be alone than be with someone who made me choose between their comfort and my conscience. You're not alone now. No. She raised an eyebrow. 1.5 dates doesn't exactly equal a relationship, Howard. Then let's keep having dates until it does. You're very persistent. Only about things that matter. They finished their meal and ordered coffee. The diner was filling up with the dinner crowd, working people grabbing food before late shifts, families with kids sticky from too much syrup, elderly couples who'd probably been coming here for decades. Can I ask you something? Irene said. And I want you to be honest. Always. What do you see when you look at me? The question surprised him. What do you mean? I mean, do you see a project? Someone to fix or save? Do you see someone exotic or different from your usual world? Or do you see? She trailed off, uncertain. I see someone real, Howard said immediately. I see strength without pretense. Kindness without weakness. Honesty even when it's uncomfortable. I see someone who knows who she is and doesn't apologize for it. He paused. And I see someone beautiful. Not in spite of the hard things you've survived, but because of them. Because they shaped you into someone worth knowing. Irene blinked rapidly. You can't just say things like that. Why not? It's true. Because it makes me want to believe this could work. And believing that feels dangerous. What if it's not dangerous? What if it's just possible? Possible, she repeated softly. I like that word better than certain, or destined, or any of that fairy tale language. Me too. Possible means we get to choose it. Every day. She checked her watch. I have to leave for work in 20 minutes. Then we have 20 minutes. Will you tell me something? Irene leaned forward. Something you've never told anyone else. Something real. Howard thought about deflecting, about keeping his secrets safe. But wasn't that the whole problem? He'd spent 3 years protecting himself so thoroughly that no one could reach him. After the accident, he began slowly. I spent 6 months in recovery. Surgeries, physical therapy, occupational therapy. Learning to live with pain that never quite goes away. And through all of it, I had visitors. Friends, family, business associates. They'd sit by my hospital bed and tell me I was so brave, so strong, that I'd get through this. That sounds supportive. It was. But none of them asked how I actually felt. None of them let me be angry or scared or broken. They needed me to be brave because my bravery made them comfortable. So I performed bravery for them. I smiled through the pain. I joked about the scars. I insisted I was fine. He met her eyes. But I wasn't fine. I was terrified. And lonely. And so angry at the world for doing this to me. But I couldn't say that. Because saying it would make me weak. would make me the tragic figure everyone pitied instead of the survivor they admired. So you've been performing ever since? Yes. Until the blackout. Until you. You didn't need me to be brave. You just let me be honest. Irene reached across the table and took his hand. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for asking. They sat like that for a moment, hands joined across the cheap laminate table in a working-class diner. And Howard realized something profound. This was what he'd been missing. Not romance. Not excitement. Just the simple grace of being known. I have to go, Irene said reluctantly. But Howard, let's do this again. Friday night. Same time, same place. It's a date. Date number 3. We're practically going steady. She smiled as she stood. Walk me out. He paid the check. Maria gave him a knowing look, but said nothing, and followed Irene outside. The cold hit them immediately, sharp and clean. Thank you for tonight, Irene said. For showing up. For being honest. Thank you for giving me the chance. She kissed him then. Not on the cheek this time, but properly. Her lips were cold from the winter air, but warmed quickly. Howard cupped her face with both hands, scarred and unscarred, and kissed her back with everything he felt. When they broke apart, they were both smiling. I have to go, she whispered. But I'll see you Friday. I'll count the hours. That's cheesy again. Is it working again? Unfortunately, yes. She walked away toward the bus stop, turning once to wave. Howard stood in the cold and watched until she disappeared from sight. His phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. The press is asking about your recent activities. How should I respond? Howard typed back. No comment. And please stop forwarding press inquiries. My personal life is no longer a public matter. He drove home through streets that felt warmer somehow, despite the temperature. The penthouse was still empty when he arrived. Still silent. But it didn't feel quite so isolating anymore. Because he had Friday to look forward to. And next Tuesday. And all the days after that. For the first time in 3 years, Howard Jones was building something that mattered. Not a business empire or a public image. Just a relationship. Just a possibility. Just hope. The story of the scarred billionaire and the janitor who saw past his wounds wouldn't make headlines. There would be no dramatic rescue. No grand gesture that went viral. Just 2 people choosing each other, one honest conversation at a time. And maybe that was the better story anyway. The one where love wasn't about being saved or fixed or completed by someone else. Where it was about being seen and accepted and chosen. Where scars, visible or invisible, were part of the story but not the whole story. Where possible was enough. As Boston settled into winter, as the snow continued to fall and the city prepared for the new year, Howard and Irene built their possibility. Slowly, carefully, honestly. And somewhere in a small diner called Maria's Place, 2 coffee cups sat on a corner table, steam rising into the air like promises made and kept. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that real love sees past what the world refuses to look at, then do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss stories like this one. Drop a comment telling me what you think about Howard and Irene's journey. Do you believe they can make it work? And if this story made you feel something real, smash that like button. Because stories about genuine connection, about seeing and being seen, about choosing love despite the odds, these stories matter. And your support helps me keep telling them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in love that heals what money can't buy.